Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another Rogers Reedy webinar. It is a special webinar that we have today. We've got some fantastic special guests. It's the grand final, it's the AFL Grand Final webinar. We've got some special guests coming along. We've just been speaking to one of them. And so we're all excited. We're all locked down again. I mean, it seems to be the common sort of thread that on all our webinars, that we're locked down, but I've escaped lockdown and come into the office today and I had to put on the suit that doesn't fit me anymore and had to colour the hair so I don't look like an old man. But anyway, this is what lockdown is. We've got 200 attendees today, 200 plus, great numbers, Everyone's most likely sitting at home watching today's webinar, with the anticipation of talking to the great man shortly. Before we get to Matt, we're going to talk about Rogers Reedy as we love talking about. For all the people who don't know who Rogers Reedy are, well, my name is Brent Morgan. For a start, I'm a director in the Melbourne office of Rogers Reedy, and Rogers Reedy is a international insolvency and forensic firm, and our claim to fame is that we are truly the only national firm that has offices in all states and territories of Australia. So we love that little claim to fame. State of the market, I'll just give you a quick update. And Matt actually asked, what are you guys busy? And the answer to that is we're steady. We're steady. You would expect with the lockdowns that have happened in Victoria and nationally, that we would see a lot more insolvencies, but like everything, it is driven by the tax office, and the tax office is sitting on their hands at the moment. They're holding on to, I think at the moment it's $50 billion of arrears in tax debt, which has gone through the roof. But if they're not enforcing it, if they're not making the phone calls, well, then there's not a lot of pressure. But saying that, we are starting to see a bit more activity. Rogers Reedy has just done their first small business restructure. This is the new regime that was brought in at the start of the year to avoid liquidation and voluntary administration. It is really a form of restructure outside a formal insolvency process, and fingers crossed that will get through shortly. So we're all excited by that. Anyway, get back to talking about what we're here for today. So another grand final, and another grand final that is not in Melbourne. It's heartbreaking. It's the biggest game of the year. And again, it's missing from the spiritual home of the MCG. So we're a bit saddened by that, that the Melburnians miss out on that fun, the barbecues, walking into the MCG. But look, on the other side, Optus Stadium looks amazing. It's going to be done, superbly well. I think it's going to have a real buzz about it. It's going to be sad for the Melbourne supporters who are not going to be able to experience the MCG, such as Shane Cremin, who is one of my fellow partners and a mad D supporter. Morning, Shane, or afternoon, Shane. How are you?
Morning, Brent. I'm well, albeit a bit bittersweet that we can't be there to support the Ds. Be nice to have supporters in the crowd with all their teeth for a change, but not to be.
Whoa. Is that a dig at Richmond or Collingwood? What's
both?
Both, right? Okay,
and the doggies.
And the doggies. So you're all set. How are you going to spend grand final?
Look, ready to go. Absolutely pumped. It's been going to be a long 2 weeks. Can't imagine how it is for the players, but feeling the butterflies already. Front of the house is decked out. There's sort of bit of the vibe going on with cars honking their horns as they drive past, so you still feel a little bit part of it, but that's about as good as it gets. So I'll be watching at home with the family, having a few tinnies.
Fingers crossed for a D's victory. Good luck.
Go D's. Thank you.
Thank you for helping me present today. Before we get to Matt, and everyone's eagerly waiting for us to talk to Matt. Charge your glasses because it's all about having a beer with Lloyd today. We should be having a beer, but we should be out drinking and eating and enjoying ourselves, but we're not. We're going to do it on Zoom today. But look, the introduction to the grand final, I mean, it's tantalising. It's exciting. We've got, I think, the two top teams, for the year. I mean, Melbourne has been a top 4 side all year, and the Bulldogs have been effectively since early on as well, right up till about round 22, where they had a bit of a shake. So I feel they're the two top sides. We've had Port, we've had Brisbane, we've had Geelong, who've had claims at different stages. But I think the results of the prelims have overwhelmingly make us think that we've got the two best sides. So, but historically, they've been, the two least successful sides in the last 6 decades. I don't think Shane knows what a grand final is. Would you know where to go, Shane? Would you know where to go?
Unfortunately not. Yeah, I have memories of 2000, which we'll get into a bit later. But,
Whoa. Matt, do you have memories of 2000?
I was going to jump in before there, Brent, but I didn't want to interrupt you. But I hope Shane's not in the fetal position like most of the Melbourne supporters were at the end of the 2000 grand final. Most of the players were, supporters were. They were in a bad state after we pretty much beat them up that day in September.
Wow. I was in London at the time, and I went to the walkabout where it's full of Australians, and I got in there at 11 o'clock, not realising the grand final had been played about 5 hours earlier. There was no Melbourne supporters. All the Essendon supporters were drunk as crazy, and I said, Essendon won. Essendon won. So we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
Melbourne hasn't won a premiership since '64. They beat the Pies, from what I recall. I wasn't around, so I don't really know. They've lost a couple of grand finals. They lost one to Hawthorn in '88 by, a record margin, 96 points. They lost against Lloyd's team in 2000 by 60. Did they win the fight? Was there a bit of a melee there? We'll get to that in a minute. But the Bulldogs, they famously, broke the drought in 2016. So exciting. So, and I think St Kilda's played in more grand finals than the Bulldogs over that time. And we obviously know that Collingwood have as well. They just don't win them. So anyway, on to the main man who we're here today, Matthew Lloyd. Matt, good afternoon. How are you?
No, I'm great, thanks. Like everyone, it's been challenging times for us all throughout the year. And I was just saying that I'm currently looking out in my backyard, and I've got a in-ground basketball ring being installed. So I'm trying to keep the kids going. I've got kids that are 14, 12, and also 8. So yeah, 2 girls and a boy. So trying to keep them occupied. But I'm being fortunate that in my role at Channel 9, none of the shows have stopped. So I do footy classified on a Monday night, footy classified on a Wednesday night, the Sunday footy show, and then I've been calling footy off to television for 3AW for probably a year and a half now. So I'll call a second grand final off the television with the great Lee Matthews on Saturday night.
How do you go with that? That must be difficult, calling it off the TV. I know I do when I was usually screaming and yelling at it.
It is challenging because you're often asked by the commentators about matchups. And sometimes you're trying to work out who is playing on who, how did a player spit out and get free the way Bailey Smith has been playing. Often when you're at the ground, you can see where he's come from. Whereas when you're watching off a television, you obviously can't give the insight to your listeners of what has truly happened. But the ratings haven't been affected. So our 3AW probably think, okay, why pay for accommodation? Why pay for flights when we're still doing the numbers that we're doing? So I think it's probably into the future, we won't jump on planes and travel as much as we were for the previous 10 years that I've been with the station.
Yep. They're good on cutting the costs, aren't they?
Yeah.
Matt, so just briefly, your 3 children, do they all go for Essendon?
They all do, but my older girls aren't right into it. They're 14 and 12 and have other passions that aren't AFL, but I've got a son who's 8, nearly 9. I thought his first 2 years of footy, he didn't get to play last year in the under-8s and under-9s. He probably played 5 or 6 games. So it's been hard, really hard on everyone's kids. And my son, he's like a caged lion, just wanting to start playing his sport, and he can't. But if I asked him, what do you want to do when you're old? He says, I want to be an AFL footballer and I want to play for Essendon. And I grew up that way. My dad played 29 games for Carlton, and I just followed my dad. I idolised him, and that's where my passion for football started. So, yeah, and I'd love nothing more than my son to hopefully be good enough to play AFL footy one day. Yeah.
But I mean, you're getting the basketball ring up now, I would have thought an NBA career. You could travel around the US, going to all the games. It's not your aspiration.
Well, I've got soccer goals. I've got soccer goals in the right-hand corner. So if I can get him playing for Liverpool one day, I've got the basketball in that corner, footy and cricket over the front. So it's a bit of I've used every bit of space that I've got, Brent, to set him up for whatever sport he's possibly good enough at.
Yeah, sounds like you've got a metropolis there. It sounds fantastic. Lloyd, not everyone knows you, so let's talk about your career. To Bombers supporters, you're called Lloydie, and you're called the Velvet Sledgehammer.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I had to look it up. I thought, should I call him the Velvet Sledgehammer? But it's basically been big, strong, maybe possibly violent is the dictionary definition, but has a softer side. Is that an appropriate description?
I'd say that. I think that any player, you look at the better players in the game, they've all got that. You have to be a great competitor. And I know that I speak to a lot of kids around, what does it take to be a AFL footballer? And the first thing I say is you got to be a competitor. If you're not a competitor, you won't make it. Or if you've got skills and you're talented, you might play some games, but you won't make it. To 200 games, 250 games. You have to be a great competitor. And I was drafted at 16 years of age as the number one 16-year-old in the country at the end of 1994. And with that brought a lot of attention. And so I burst onto the scene. I actually played in the NAB Cup at 16 years of age.
Wow.
I was at St. Bernard's College in Essendon in 1995 as a year 12, and I debuted on the school holidays. So I played against the Adelaide Crows in round 13 of 1995, my first game, and then played against Richmond in front of 85,000 people as a 17 and 1 month old in game 2. So there's a lot of, I suppose, talk about me, but with that came a lot of full backs by the name of Stephen Cridiuk and Stephen Silvani and all these guys who came after me. And I didn't handle it too well. I was nearly in tears one game after Cridiuk pinched and punched me pretty much the whole day. And Kevin Sheedy said to me, if you're going to make it in this game, you've got to toughen up. You've got to harden up. And I hit the gym pretty hard. And I started to try and I did look up to Wayne Carey and Ablett Senior, and they played it hard and tough. And I started to throw my weight around, but I got suspended 4 times in 10 games around the 2001 in the 2001 season, and that's where Sam Newman and Eddie Maguire on the Footy Show labelled me the Velvet Sledgehammer. So nice bloke, but he has that white line fever.
Bit crazy. So 270 games, great career. That's a lot of games. Well done. AFL Hall of Fame. That's an impressive. And you were captain for 4 seasons, which I know. And I think one of them you only played a couple of games. I think you were injured. All-Australian 5 times. Very impressive. How many Anzac medals did you win?
No, I didn't actually win one, unfortunately. So you rubbing that in as a Collingwood supporter.
How many did you win, though? We won't even ask that.
They were great games. Yeah, they were great games. It's one of the reasons I loved playing for Essendon was that no matter where you were on the ladder, you felt like you knew you were just going to turn up to 90,000 people. And so I was fortunate enough to have some great days, some poor days, and you were scrutinised within an inch of your life on those days. And it's what built you up for finals footy, that you just knew that if you played well as an Essendon player, you were going to be lauded. If you played poorly as an Essendon player, though, you're going to be hit harder than you would if you played for North Melbourne. So they were the highs and lows of it. But I grew up in Avondale Heights, so it was a 20-minute drive to Windy Hill. So I was blessed. I couldn't go to Carlton under the father-son rule because my dad didn't play enough games, but Essendon was the club I wanted to go to if it wasn't Carlton, so it worked out well.
That's great. So 926 goals. You won the Coleman a couple of times, twice?
3 times.
3 times. There's some serious goals. Now, you mentioned your dad played for Carlton.
I've got a question for you about the mark of the year, your screamer over against the D's. What did you say to Matthew Warnock afterwards? There's a bit of footage there where you're giving it to him.
Well, amazingly, that day I started on a player by the name of Stephen Martin. So Stephen Martin was playing his 3rd game for Melbourne, and they lined him up on me at fullback to start the day. And I'll admit here, he's going to play in a grand final as a ruckman on Saturday, but he was probably the worst backman I ever played on in my career, so I'll admit that. So I thought I'm surprised he's still going, but they were obviously playing him in the wrong position. He should have, but he was developing. He wasn't ready to play ruck with probably Gawn and these blokes playing, Jamar. So that's how I started. I kicked 3 on Steph Martin in about 3 minutes to start the game. I was certainly confident. So Warnock came to me then, and Warnock was doing the old push, shove, pinch, punch, and I was just sick and tired of him. And he lost me, and a pack formed, and I was able to launch on top of the pack of that. It was Brad Green. There was a number of different blokes. Steph Martin was under that pack, and as we were going back after I kicked the goal, I'd had enough of Warnock by this stage, and I said to Warnock, I reckon you've always dreamt about being on a footy card, but I don't reckon you're ever good enough to get your own card in your own right. So I said, I reckon now you're going to be on one, but unfortunately it's going to be me taking a hanger all over you. And fair to say the frostiness between the two of us stepped up even further after that moment.
That is brilliant. So Matt, you because your dad played for the Blues, so how many games did he play?
He played 29.
29. But you're a Fitzroy fan, is that right? Is that what I'm?
Yeah, that's right. So my dad never pushed me, to support Carlton, and never bought me any Carlton, jumpers or anything, I suppose. And I got to about 5 or 6 years of age, and I just loved hanging out at the Avondale Heights Footy Club, and there was a Fitzroy supporter there, and he said to my dad, "Gee, your son's good. He looks like he can play." And he then said, I'm taking a group of kids from the Avondale Heights Footy Club to go and watch Fitzroy play. You happy if I take your son? So I went with a group of my mates, and Bernie Quinlan kicked a bag of goals. And he became my first hero, Bernie. And so I fell in love with Fitzroy that day. And amazingly, my last hero was Alistair Lynch. I loved Lynchy, 94. I think he took Mark of the Year. And by 1997, Alistair Lynch was playing at full back on me. I was full forward. So it all happened really, really quickly for me, where I went from idolising these blokes to playing on them a number of years later.
Yeah. Wow. Just give you a book a blatant plug too, Lloydie. You said at the start there that your body was telling you had another season in you, possibly 2, but your mind was telling you something totally different. Can you explain what you meant by that for us?
Yeah, so I'm on a list at 16 years of age. And then so I got to 28, and I was offered the biggest contract of my life, which was a 3-year contract, more money than I've ever been offered in my life. So I signed that. But I had my first child at 28 around that time, and I was really starting to tire. I had a real goal of kicking more goals than I kicked the year before. So I kicked 7 in my first season. Then I kicked 25 goals. Then I kicked 63 goals. Then I kicked 70 goals. Then I kicked 87 goals. Then I kicked 109 goals.
Wow.
Dropped to 105 the next season. But I went 80s and 90s. And I was forever just putting pressure on myself. Pressure to get better and better and do better. And the whole competition was putting that pressure on me as well. And I got from 16 to 28, and I was mentally really drained, exhausted. And I signed this contract to take me from 28 to 31. And when they were putting another contract in front of me at 31, I didn't have Kevin Cheat. I had Matthew Knights, who I didn't have a great relationship with because we didn't see the game the same way. And I felt like he was maybe looking to phase me out of the club. So I hated turning up to play games, and I hated turning up to train, and I lost all my enjoyment for it. So I walked away from the game. I had 4 clubs offer me deals. I had Collingwood, I had Sydney, I had the Western Bulldogs, I had Carlton, all wanted me to play, and the Western Brad Johnson was ringing me non-stop to play, but I just lost my passion. So that's where I think my body could still do it, but I didn't have the hunger to keep playing anymore.
So what year was that, Matt?
That was 2009, and I reckon it hit me, Brent. I was driving to the MCG to play Carlton on a Friday night, and I could just see the people pouring in to the MCG, and it was 2 hours before the game, and I saw a father chasing his daughter through the botanical garden, And I said to myself, you know, I'd rather be chasing my daughter that I just had through the gardens and turning up to play a game. And I'd never been like that. I had a steely resolve. I was hungry. I wanted to kick bags of goals, and I wasn't caring as much for a poor performance either. And I thought the eye of the tiger, that flame, I don't have it anymore. And my wife was saying to me, you'll get it back in another club. She wanted me to keep going. She's saying, you'll get it back. But I didn't want to commit to a club for one season. I thought if I'm going to go to another club, I commit to them for 2 or 3 years. So that's when I thought to myself, I can't commit to another club and do it for one season. So that's when I decided to retire. Yeah.
So 08, I mean, you looked sort of, you've said before that you felt done in 08, but you turned it around. Well, what happened there?
Yeah. So I'd always had a couple of bad games in a row, but I'd never been down for three in a row. And I had 6 shockers in a row, 6 bad ones. And it was more mentally, I was hating the coach, not enjoying the game. And so I had a bad Anzac Day game against your Pies. My sister-in-law invited me over for dinner. I was sitting there and there was a counsellor that just happened to be there. They had the table cleared out. Next minute, I'm sitting there with like a counsellor, and he said, how you doing? I said, I'm good. He goes, follow me. He took me into the bathroom. He said, have a look at your colour of your skin. I've never seen someone so pale. Be honest with me. How you feeling? I said, I'm good. I wasn't ready to open up to someone I hadn't really met before. He said, will you do me one favour? Would you come and see me tomorrow? And I said, it's my day off. We're playing West Coast on Friday night. I don't really feel like spending my day off having a chat to you, to be honest. He said, just give it a chance. So I went to his parish in Coburg. And before you knew it, he was pretty good. And I was absolutely bawling my eyes out, crying at the fact that I've lost my way. I don't see where my next good game's coming from. I'm embarrassing myself. I'm captain of the club. I don't even feel confident in speaking to players. I'm being smashed from pillar to post by Mike Sheen in the Herald Sun, Rowan Connolly in the Age. But it was amazing. It was just probably what I needed. I told him everything. But I was called into Matthew Knight's office on that next day, and he said, I want to speak to you. And I thought, I'm going to be dropped. I'm going to be dropped as captain of the club. But he said to me, your days are over as full forward. I'm going to try you on a half forward flank. It's probably sink or swim. But I kicked 2 goals, but I had 30 disposals.
Wow.
In this game, was voted second best on the ground. And it was like I was back, and I just needed to probably speak to people. So if there's anyone listening to this who often isn't travelling too well and you're fighting on your own, whoever it is, just grab someone to talk to. So just speaking to someone turned things around for me and had me get everything off my chest, get the anger off my chest. And I was holding in. I didn't want to speak to my parents, anyone at the club. And I got on a run, Brent, and turned things around and kicked 62 goals in the back half of the year and finished second in the best and fairest. Yeah. But what I will say, I was mentally and physically drained, and the following year, I didn't really reach those heights. I had injuries and kicked 35 goals the last season.
So sorry, Shane's about to ask you a question, but I just want to intervene. Do you read the newspapers as a player? I mean, you're having all these things, you know, it's your profession and you're sitting there and then these people are writing these articles about you and do you read them?
I'd never buy the paper because I knew, like, the media manager would ring me and go, just to let you know, Mike Sheehan's ringing me. He's going to write a back page story about you tomorrow. Do you want to be quoted in it? And I'll say, no, why would I give Mike a quote? Because he's saying it's time for me to retire. And they said, okay, just you could try and steer the story to where you want it to be. I said, no, I'm not giving him a comment. So you know it's coming. But then I'm walking into the club the next day and staff members are saying, don't worry about Mike Sheehan said about you. My family's ringing me. Don't worry about what Mike Sheehan's saying about you. So you just can't avoid it. And it's like, that's the toughest part of the job, I suppose, is the injuries. Any injury and you feel really under pressure because your body is your career. and then it's the media speculation that if someone's having a bad day, really in a different workforce, no one knows about it. But when you're having a bad time of it, when you're a high-profile player as an AFL footballer, it was stressful. It was a real stressful environment. So I openly say I can't remember the last game I enjoyed playing. So it did become a very stressful job for me, more so than doing what I loved doing as a kid when I followed my dad around.
Yeah,
that's hard.
Well, thanks, Lloyd. We'll get on to a bit of news around some other clubs before we hit Saturday's game, which we're all eager to talk to you about. Carlton seem to be in a bit of trouble lately. How do you feel about that as a Bombers man, or do you feel for them, given your dad used to play for them? And also, the disappointed Vossi, obviously, just in the news. So I just wondered how you felt about that as well. Is that a good move for them?
Yeah. I'm really neutral now. Like, I just love watching good teams play. So I couldn't care less who wins a flag each year. I'm pumped for Melbourne, to be honest, Shane. Like, I hope they win it for the history of where they've been. And my most enjoyable.
Matt,
Brent,
don't do that.
No, let him go, Brent. Let him go,
Brent,
please.
My most enjoyable game as a commentator has been the Western Bulldogs. Like, I got swept up in 2016, and so I just love watching good sides play. So Andrew Clark, who's on here, who wrote my book with me, like, I despise Hawthorn. I despise them, and Clark is a Hawthorn man. I couldn't stand the Hawks. I hated them more. I hated them more than any other side when I retired. But then going to watch Franklin and Rioli and these Hodge and these folks play, I just admire good football sides, and I admire what Melbourne is doing. And just on your question about Carlton, my brother's the head of football there. He's been under siege himself. He's been splashed all over the papers himself about possibly getting the sack. So I've been like supporting him through that. He got through with flying colours as the head of football there. They've appointed Brian Cook, and now they're appointing Michael Voss. So I want nothing more now than for my brother, for Carlton to get back on their feet and start being the club they. I know you're shaking your head, Brent, but I think blood's thicker than water. So I think with the Blues, I've got a brother who's head of footy at Carlton, and I've got a brother who's head of footy at Geelong. So they are probably my second sides now.
So Matt, while we're talking about, and you mentioned about your book, who was written by our marketing man Andrew Clark. The best question today. So I did mention at the start, if you want to ask Matt a question, there's his book there at all great booksellers. Not that none of them are open, but you can undoubtedly sort of buy it online without a doubt. But the best question today. Jump in the Q&A to Matt. We'll win. We'll get it signed. We'll even get it signed. We'll get it signed. But if you don't have it, it's a great read. So go and buy Straight Shooter. Fantastic. And what about the Dons now? Are you involved, Matt, at all? Do you have a passion still for them, or Yeah,
I do. I do have a passion for them. I probably lost it a little bit, to be honest, Brent, when I ended my career because of the situation with Matty Knight. We weren't on the best of terms, so I didn't really want to see Matty do too well. I'll be honest, in that initial period. But as I said, I've got a son now who is passionate about them. My daughters are too. Cale Hooker's one of my best mates, so I love seeing what he's been doing. I've sort of mentored him through this year, through his forward role. I went back for one season to assist James Hird to be like a kicking coach for Joe Danaher. Really enjoyed that. But I realised, am I going to be a media commentator or am I going to be a coach? And I made that decision then that I was really under pressure sometimes where I'd make a comment about Essendon not travelling well, and the daggers I could see the daggers going into me. I'd turn up for footy training and I could see there was staff upset with what I had to say about them. Players were upset with what I had to say about them. So I couldn't wait for the year to end, in a sense, and I let Essendon know that as much as I enjoyed it, I've decided I'm a media commentator. I'm not a coach. So I get my coaching fix with Haileybury in the private school system, and I can do my media and nothing. I'm not conflicted. So that's my role. But I am still passionate about the club.
And so what do you think about their group? Unfortunately, it's looking good. They picked up 3 picks in the top 10 last year, which I still can't work out how they did that.
This time last year, I was doing the trade period, and you're going, Danaher gone, Sard gone, Fantasia gone, but at the end of it all, they've come out with a stronger list for it. So,
what's your views on that move? What are your views on the Danaher move? I mean,
like they held him for 1 year, but when a player doesn't want to be there, I was at that time hold him, but not many of them turn it around and play good footy for you. So for every Ryan O'Keefe that wanted to leave and becomes the Norm Smith medalist for Sydney, most of them end up leaving not long after or don't play the best footy. Josh Dunkley's going to play in a grand final. He wanted to leave. So the odd story can turn it around, but I think you always end up with better than what you left. So I don't know too many blokes like Dangerfield left, but Adelaide I think played in a grand final not long after that. Gary Ablett left, and they won a grand final. Franklin left. Hawthorn still won a premiership without him. So the Giants are going all right without Jeremy Cameron still. So I don't think you lose too much. So you may as well cash in and let these blokes go.
Yep.
Just switching over to Hawthorn now. Lloydie, what are your thoughts on how they've handled the transition, Mitchell and Clarko? Is that any views on that?
Yeah, I sort of get a bit of an insight. And Clarko wasn't getting on with his CEO. He wasn't getting on with his head of footy. He wasn't getting on with his staff. So while people go berserk from the outside, after 17 years or whatever he was as coach, he's great on everyone. So the time for change has to come, and Hawthorn are a bottom 4 side at the moment. So it's a perfect time to change. And
sorry, Matt, what did you say? Hawthorn or what? Sorry,
are a bottom 4 side.
Oh, nice to hear, isn't it?
So I think that rather than have Sam Mitchell go and coach Collingwood, which I think he would have got the job, they see him as the next Clarkson. Like, that's how highly they rate him. He's an intelligent person. His big challenge is his relationships. Sam isn't everyone's cup of tea. So that's his challenge, building the relationships with the players, but he knows the game back to front. He's been preparing himself for this for a long time. So I'm content with the move that they've made, and Alistair will be coaching the Gold Coast or another club within the next 7 or 8, 9 months. So he gets a year off.
So does it have the Malthouse Buckley feel about it, or completely different?
Where it was wrong was Mickey was bitter. They wanted Mick to stay on and stay with Buckley. This is just a clean break, and Clarkson has nothing to do with Hawthorn. So I think he intended to coach out the year, but we all know in this footy industry it doesn't work that way. So what he said initially, Mitchell didn't want him there. Mitchell didn't want him there as the coach. So, wasn't Clarko going to be there next year as well? That was the initial. Yeah. That was the initial situation, but no one wanted that to happen. Players didn't want it to happen. Mitchell didn't want it to happen. So in the end, he was forced into. Oh, they sacked him. They sacked him because they wanted him to come to that situation. But Clarkson also has had 900,000 reasons, dollar reasons, for them to sack him. So it was very political. If he walked, he didn't get paid. But if he's sacked, he gets $900,000. So they had to sack him in the end. He wasn't walking. He knew he wasn't going to get his money if he walked. So he needed to be sacked, and he was pretty much in a sense wanting to be sacked, which eventually they got to. So that's all the stuff that that's going on behind the scenes with payout. Every other coach that has a contract, they have a 6-month clause payout, so you don't have to pay them a lot. But Clarkson had a watertight contract where he had to be paid the lot. So that's where it was a bit of a trickier situation.
You can afford to take a year off then.
Yeah.
He's got that big place down on the peninsula that he's got to pay for. So
yeah.
Now let's not kid ourselves. The real reason you're here today is to talk about the Magpies. No, I'm only teasing. Where did they go wrong? Geez, the fall from grace and the whole Treloar. What's I'd love to hear what you know.
They made an absolute meal of it last year. I think that they went all in thinking they were going to win a premiership around that time where they blew it against the Giants in that prelim. One of the greatest. It was not as big a choke as us in '99, Brent, but it was just about as bad as you could get, losing that prelim. They were all in thinking they could win one. They overpaid Greta Grundy. They bought in Dane Beams. I'm sure there's other deals. Treloar was paid massive overs for what he's worth. And they got to a point where they didn't win a flag. And they said, okay, we've just got to clear these players out. They had the Gold Coast Suns on the hook to take Adam Treloar's $1 million contract, plus give the Pies pick 5 in the draft, and that would have solved all their problems.
What?
But then Adam Treloar says, I don't want to go to Gold Coast.
Selfish bastard.
Yeah, so the deal was up in smoke, and then every other club realised at that point. The Gold Coast weren't aware Collingwood had salary cap troubles. So Gold Coast were willing to think, oh, we're getting Adam Treloar. Then when Adam says he doesn't want to go there, every other club was aware that Collingwood had $1 million they needed to get rid of. So then they started playing hardball with Collingwood and said, no, it's a fire sale. It's a fire sale. So suddenly they're having to just give away players, and they had no hand. They had no strength of power. Nathan Buckley, I reckon, was potentially grading on some players and didn't have the full support of players. So with that and their salary cap issues, it all just fell apart. And then I think a conservative game style, which the boys didn't really want to play. Yep. And before you know it, it becomes just a mediocre footy side. So I think all these changes, the Eddie Maguire situation going on where he was being squeezed out and what they wanted, the board wanted him gone. So there's just two. They say, I heard Tim Watson once say, the fish rots at the head. So if you've got your board not as one, your coach really not being supported by players, well, it filters down to the players.
Yep.
And that's where, you'd say Melbourne have got their act together this year and have turned things around.
How long? Just so I can start my membership subscription again. How long is it going to be?
It's interesting. Like Dacos comes in, who's the best kid in the country by a long way. So that's going to be massive for you. But you made a big mistake and you traded picks. You should have pick 2 as well, which you finished second bottom, but that goes to the Giants.
Goes to the Giants.
I just wonder whether you trade out a Brodie Grundy or a Jordan De Goey now and you try and get your pick 2 back. And because I think it's probably a 3-year turnaround.
Yeah, Grundy. I reckon it's where Grundy. Enough of pies. We're boring people.
We'll move to Geelong. Just looking at the ageing list there at Geelong, they need to make some hard decisions in the short term now, or do they stick with it for another season?
So my brother's Brett Shane is head of footy at Geelong, so it is they went all in. They went all in, Shane, and I reckon they've missed their window. So I think they need to start blooding kids. And unfortunately for Dangerfield, he's got to miss out, I reckon. Selwood and Hawkins and these guys, they've given great service and they'll be there again next year. But there's too many young up-and-coming sides that have gone past them. So you look at, obviously, Melbourne were a team of 25-year-olds who just obliterated them. And that's the great thing about finals. Teams just get found out. So you can be a good home and away side, but all your flaws and all your weaknesses get found out in finals. That's what I loved about it. I knew running out in finals, I'm playing on the best. I'm playing on the best individuals. I'm playing on the best teams. They have looked at my game within an inch of my life. They knew I loved to lead to the left. So they would have players standing out to the left side. They had players who knew stand in front of him, stand behind him. So when you played well in a final, you knew you performed in the best AFL competition, the best competition in Australia, and the best coaches. And so I've seen Brisbane exposed this final series. I've seen Essendon exposed this final series. I've seen Port Adelaide exposed. I've seen Geelong exposed. And now we're left with, as Brent said at the start, the two best sides in it. And we've seen Gary Rowan embarrassed. We've seen Motlop embarrassed. And Geelong, for being a good home and away side, have fallen short again. So, yeah, no more topping up, and it's time to go back to you. And they've also sacked a few assistants as well.
Lloydie, what about Tigers? The rebuild?
Yeah.
How would you manage that, do you think?
They've recruited Robbie Tarrant, so that tells us that from North Melbourne. So that tells us they want to have one last go at it.
Yep.
So I think while they've got Dusty Martin at 30 years of age, Jack Rebolt's still playing like a 29-year-old. He's 33. Noah Bolter, Dion Prestia, Koch one last season. I don't think they'll win. I don't think they'll be a premiership threat next year personally, but they feel there's one last crack at it before they, and they've got an unbelievable draft hand. So they can bring Tarrant in, plus they can bring in a heap of good kids for the first time. So yeah, they're within their right to top up with a one or two, and they give away nothing for him. But they've got the best draft hand they've got in a long time. So yeah, they'll be thereabouts.
They'll be thereabouts. Now we've got you here. Enough of talking about other people. We want to talk about, we've got the grand final in a couple of days. You've been in a couple of them. One is a winner and one unfortunately not. So we want to understand your experience of that whole week leading up to in the final. So, I mean, is it a crazy period? I mean, how many people ask you for tickets? You know, the old mates and family, and what's that all like? Matt?
Yeah, it's all part of it. Like you got to, yeah. Brent, can you hear me? Yeah.
I can hear you.
That's all really important, because you have to stay in control of your week and not try and make it as different a week to what other weeks look like. So you get given 4 grand final tickets for free, and you get given the option to buy 4. So that's how it works. So you've got 8 tickets. You look after your family, and you just tell all your friends, sorry, I can't help you out. You let them know, and you turn your phone off for a lot of the week. I know that we had 10,000 people at Windy Hill for our 2 training sessions. So that was amazing. Like I was floating on air. I was 22 for my first grand final, and I was 23 for my second grand final. So I was at probably the peak of my powers as a player. They were my 200 goal years. So I felt $1 million, to be honest. And then, get there nice and early to avoid the traffic. So I didn't want to be stressed. So that was something. We had the grand final parade, which was just an amazing feeling, like waving to my parents who came, and all my loved ones. So I can't imagine how many tens of thousands were there for the grand final parade. The tension of having Melbourne on one side, Essendon on the other side, James Hird holding one side of the cup, David Neitz on one side of it, and you could feel the tension between the two teams there at that grand final parade. And then you couldn't do your normal warm-up because of all the grand final entertainment. So we're doing a lot of our warm-ups underneath the Brunton Avenue car park. So that was very, very different. I was big on checking the wind conditions for my goal kicking. So there was like a 10-minute window to get out there and practice your set shots and things. And then it was game on. Like we had a quiet room where I was a quiet one, where myself, James Hird, Fletch, Scotty Lucas would read the footy record. And then there was a room with blaring music where the Johnson boys and Solomon and Damien Hardwick, they're boxing, they're banging their head against lockers. So everyone had their individual makeups of how they wanted to prepare for the game. And then once Sheedy did his final address, and then it was on, and it's about getting your first touch as soon as you can. And I was able to have a shot and miss early, and then I kicked my first goal probably 15 minutes into the first quarter, and then I was away. And we started to break the demons halfway through the second quarter of that grand final. And just to be quick, the second grand final, we were 21 points up just on half time against Brisbane. Lynchy kicked the goal on half time to get it back to about 14-15.
Yep.
We had the first 7 inside 50s of the third quarter, and we only kicked 1 goal.
Oh,
and,
yep.
And it still lives with me to this day that we had Brisbane, we had them, we didn't put them away, and then they came like a steam train late in the game and steamrolled us. So that one still hurts me.
Yeah. So back into that game back in 2000, Lloydie, back to the GF, you're 40 points up, and then Michael Long cleans up Troy Simmons. Putting aside your personal performance in the melee, were you guys worried that could open up for the Ds? Was there anything said afterwards to regroup and change a game, obviously?
No, we felt like you never feel like you're home, but we were missing that many shots too. Like we kicked, I reckon we kicked, 20-something points. So we felt we were right in control of the game. I think we were wound up after the 99 choke against Carlton. We were wound up like tops, to be honest. Like Sheeds was showing us vision of Melbourne wheeling their bags in and saying, how soft are these blokes? They don't even carry their bags. They wheel their bags in. We're going to smash these blokes. And I didn't have to do any of that stuff, but the back line was Dean Wallace, Dean Solomon, Mark Johnson, Damien Hardwick, and they were just like foam coming out of their mouths. So I could sense what they were like, and we had to keep it in control. But it didn't surprise me that something like that happened. It was ugly. He nearly broke Troy's neck, and I know Wallace broke Brad Green's jaw very early in the game with something that wasn't great either.
Yeah, it looked like at one stage you were trying to give the Ox a bit of a head rub.
Yeah, so I grew up watching the grand final marathons and watching the brawls of 84 and 85 of Hawthorn and Essendon and 1990 Collingwood and Essendon. And I got swept up, and as I got close to David Swartz, I was about to give him a big round arm because he was boxing with Romanascus. I go, I don't know. I'm not really I don't know how to box that well, and I'm not. As I got close to Ox, I just gave him a bit of a slap, to be honest. And next minute, I've got blokes coming at me with their fists up, and I soon backed my way out of that melee pretty quickly. So I got fined $3,000 for that slap to the face of David Swartz. So it wasn't worth my while. Yeah.
And how long would Longy get now for that? I think he got 4 weeks, but it only cost him one season game. But...
Yeah, I reckon it's worth 8 to 12 weeks. I reckon 8 to 12. Yeah, I reckon. Yeah. So we had to go sprint from Mad Monday to the tribunal. So they just told us all not to speak, and we all just pled guilty.
Is that right?
Yeah, because we were just stomach full of celebration.
And of course, you paid your $3,000 fine.
Yeah, straight out of my pocket. Yeah.
Perfect. And when do you think 2000? When do you think you had won it? Into the last, or when did you allow yourself to celebrate?
One of my great football moments was this. James Hird. We had a great football relate. We didn't hang out much off field, but we had an amazing rapport on field. So I knew what he was doing. He knew what I was doing. Like, it was amazing. Like he would just be going like this, and he was just pointing where he wanted me to lead. And we sort of had this sense for each other. And he didn't look for anybody else. The other forwards used to hate him, but he used to just kick to me every time. And I know he says, give Lloyd a 50-50 chance, and he'll win it. He'll win it. So that's the confidence he had in me, which was amazing for someone that I looked up to so much. But he kicked this ball to me. He comes steaming out of the centre bounce 5 minutes to the last, and I took a mark and I kicked the goal from 50 for about 45, and I knew we were home. And he jumped on top of me, and I held him up, and he goes, "We're 25 minutes away from being Premiership players," and so that was one of the great moments that I've enjoyed in my footy. Yeah,
that's brilliant. And let's move to, we're running out of time, and we've got lots of questions for you, Matt. Let's move to this year. I think you've said, do we have the 2 best teams? Are you satisfied we've got the 2 best teams?
Yeah, you don't know it. Yeah, you don't know it. Like, I thought Port Adelaide would beat the Western Bulldogs. So, but on neutral territory, I was super confident that Melbourne would take care of Port Adelaide. Like, I think they would have done it. So what I walked away from that game on the Friday night and I thought, wow, good luck beating Melbourne. But then to see what the Western Bulldogs did, they've got a midfield that can cope with Melbourne. And Brisbane's midfield in the first final couldn't cope. Geelong's midfield couldn't cope, but the Doggies' midfield can cope. So that's where it's going to be an unbelievable grand final with two of the best midfielders you're likely to see go head to head.
Yep.
I think both forward lines are even. I reckon the Melbourne have a better back line. I don't think the Dogs have a Lever or a May in their back line, but they play. So I like Melbourne, but one game in 28 days is not easy. They may well be off the bit a little bit early, and if the Bulldogs can capitalise on that, that gives them a chance. But I think if Melbourne start the game well and are in the game, I think they're the better side, all round side, yeah.
Do you rate the midfields equally, do you, with Chaka and Oliver against the Bont? And
I think Melbourne, the Doggies, Treloar and Dunkley are their 6th and 7th best midfielders. So I think that they bat deeper, but I think Melbourne's best 5 is better. And Gawn plays a big weight in that. Like Gawn, I've spoken on Footy Classified this week. Will they rough him up? Like, will they go after this bloke? Because he separates the teams, and it was quite interesting. Lockie Hunter said, if he gets bumped, where every time he tries to get to a ruck contest, if he gets hit 40, 50 times, can we wear him down? So I reckon they've spoken about that this week, and they're gonna try and get in his way and frustrate him. Not like brutal like it was back in 2000, but they're going to try and stop his run to give Steph Martin and English a chance. But and they need to do that, I think, otherwise if Gawn's best man on the ground, it's all over.
Yeah. So we should go with some questions, Brent, but maybe just one last one. How much are Melbourne going to win by, and why?
I'll say Melbourne by 4 goals, and I believe it's because they've just obliterated. They've obliterated the 2 finalists in Brisbane and Geelong. I am concerned about the one game in 28 days, but I think they play a brand of football that it's just, you know what you get from them. You just know what you get because it's pressure. It doesn't matter. Brent Brown and Tom McDonald, they just bring it to ground. That's all they have to do. And then Neil Bullen and the boys and Spargo and Pickett go to work. So I'm not 100% confident in my tip like I have been. Richmond, I thought, would take care of Geelong. I knew Richmond would take care of the Giants. I'm not totally confident on this one, but I'm backing in the form of Geelong. Form of Melbourne over a period of time. Yeah.
Lloyd, we've got heaps of questions. We'll go through them as best we can. Tell us about your love for Bernie Quinlan. Go Royce, someone says. That's Mark.
Yeah. I don't know if Mark was a Fitzroy supporter himself, Mark.
I think he is, yep.
Yeah, so I just fell in love with his pure kicking skill. He's kicking, I just loved him for that. And then just loved the way his nature and the way he played his footy. And I often told people in the media that Bernie was my first hero. And so, Bernie got into coaching. He left the Channel 7 career and got into coaching, and he got sacked. And he became a delivery man for Elastoplast tape. So he fell on some pretty difficult times. He lost a child, and he lost a child as well. And Bernie would drop me a note. So when he'd do the orders to drop the tape to the Essendon Footy Club, the property steward would go, Bernie's left you a note. So for my 50th game, my 100th game, my 150th, my 200th, my 250th, Bernie wrote me a letter every milestone game. So we forged a really nice relationship.
That's
and
nice.
A great respect for each other. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, Matt, there are a mixture of questions. Some are going to be serious. Some are going to be. Charles asks about the AFL stance on social issues such as marriage equality, gay rights, and improving the position of First Nations people. Should the AFL take a stronger stance on the mandatory COVID? The vaccinations, particularly around requiring vaccinations for entering a venue.
Charles and Brent, great question. And I'd never thought about this side, and I'm telling you something Eddie Maguire told me off air. He may have said it on air, but if Gillen, we've seen the tension in Melbourne at the moment. if Gillen was to make a strong stance on behalf of the AFL, there's always people that are going to agree or disagree. Eddie said, does Gillen McLaughlin want his house burnt down? Does he want a brick thrown through his window? Like, I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I think Gillen wants other people to make it mandatory first before he has to do it. So I think it will be mandatory because you can't jump on a plane, you can't play interstate games, all those sorts of things. So I reckon you're going to be separated on buses from players, planes, and so it's going to be pretty hard to have an AFL career if you're not fully vaccinated. But I reckon Gillen's waiting for someone else to make it mandatory before he does.
So hang on, so they're going to make it mandatory. Well, hang on, I'm going to go out there now and have a chat. That's just not. I should be safe wearing that around the city at the moment. Shane, ask Matt about the grass throwing. Someone wants, someone.
So what was with the how'd that start? With the grass throwing test before you go for a goal, and it was just part of your routine, a bit of help.
I'm really superstitious, and preparation was everything for me. And no one ever taught me how to kick for goal. So I get to Essendon and I'm kicking terribly. Like I had no routine. One time I'm off 6 steps, one time I'm off 10 steps. I was stabbing at the footy. So I was good enough to get a game through talent, but I was just missing. I was missing too many big goals. And Robert Shaw, who coached Adelaide and also Fitzroy, he was an assistant coach, and he smashed me in front of everyone. And he said to me, "You're going to cost us some big games, and I don't think you practice anywhere near as much as Dunstall and Lockett do." And it hit me. I was quite upset by how aggressive he was in front of the group. And so I went to a sports psychologist and an assistant coach and said, can you help me? Can you help me? Sheeds made me kick at halftime on the MCG one day, and on Anzac Day in front of 90,000 people. He didn't let me come in and listen to his halftime address. He said, you're better off kicking and practicing at halftime. And I was getting Bronx cheers, and it was embarrassing. So I thought, I've got to get my act together. But I'm at Windy Hill, and shocking conditions often, and I'm having to aim for the point post some weeks to kick a goal. So that's where the grass came in. And over an off season, I would have had 5,000 kicks with a proper routine, but throwing the grass up. So by the time I got to round 1, I'd rehearsed that throwing, and I couldn't stop. The only problem is by the time we get to 2,000, we're playing under a roof. So I had the Scott brothers at Brisbane going, "You're an absolute flog. It's all about you. You're prima donna." All this, some of the stuff that those blokes were saying to me, I can't really verbal here. But once I kept kicking the goals and I became a real accurate kick, I went from 60% to 75% in no time. No one sledged me anymore because they thought he's not going to miss. So that just stuck with me.
Yeah.
Now, we don't choose the questions, Matt, but Sam's asked, are Bacardi Breezes still your drink of choice?
Well, do you know what, Sam? I just got a message from Chompers Tony Jones saying we're allowed to have a drink in the boardroom at Channel 9 for our last Sunday footy show. What would you like to drink? So I was half wondering, can you have a slab of Bacardi Breezes ready to go for me? No, I don't. I only drink 2 or 3 times a year, but I am a vodka man. So a vodka with a touch of orange or lemonade or soda water. That's my drink of choice these days. But the amount of functions I do for people, and there's a 6-pack of Bacardi Breezes or vodka cruisers, so my fridge outside is stocked with them.
Yeah, brilliant. That is brilliant. Now, one good question I have here from Kirsty is, where do you see the future of the AFLW going? Really entertaining. I've really thoroughly enjoyed the football. Have you got a view?
It's fully supported by the AFL. The standard gets better every year. The growth in women's football in girls playing football is nearly just bigger than boys playing football. Every local team's getting a team, and Essendon just joined. Hawthorn's just joined. I think I'm probably missed Sydney. I think there's 18 teams now. So it's a full competition from next year or not this season, but the season after. So, no, the sky's the limit for it, to be honest. Yeah.
We've hit 1 o'clock, and everyone has to get back to work or go to lunch. So it's probably an appropriate time to finish up. Matthew, thank you very much for your time today. We've got lots of other questions, but we've run out of time, and we really appreciate. Did you have a favourite question? I mean, my favourite question is the last one about the AFLW. So if you're happy with that, I'm going to award that to Kirsty, who asked that question about the AFLW, and we'll get it signed for you, Kirsty. There's not many left because it was, I know it was a 500,000 run, wasn't it, on that? Did you sell many?
You're selling me short there. It was a bit few more than that.
Oh, was it a few more? Wow.
No, I don't know. I'm not sure. We about 25,000. I'm not sure, around that mark, I think.
And your family, how many of that? 23,000?
Yeah, there were a few.
Matthew,
thank you. Shane, any last words before?
Thanks, Lloyd, and just go days. It's ours.
No, thanks a lot for having me, and to everyone listening, appreciate your time and all the best through this tricky period that we've all been in.
Thanks, Matt, and good luck with the call on Saturday night.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Be safe, get vaccinated, look after yourself, and enjoy the game on Saturday. Thank you for attending. Sorry we couldn't get through all the questions, but once again, we appreciate it, and all the best. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.